mais confortável para ele, né? Promover esse debate ao lado dos senhores de forma tranquila, sentada. Queria pedir também para que, por favor, viesse ao nosso palco, e ocupasse a sua poltrona, por favor, ele que vai mediar essa palestra, como já foi dito, vice-presidente do Instituto Coalizão Saúde. Nós vamos aplaudir o senhor Giovanni Serri. Obrigado, Giovanni. Aí eu tenho uma ferramenta aqui que eu espero contar com os senhores, né? Está funcionando, gente? Alguém já se aventurou? Está funcionando o WhatsApp, gente? Tá, né? Legal, eu tenho aqui já algumas... Funcionando, aí que maravilha. Temos algumas perguntas. Nós temos duas. Cada ícone é uma pessoa que perguntou. Então, você clica no ícone e o senhor me apresenta. Assim sucessivamente. Aqui o senhor volta. Ó, tá chegando mais, né? Estou gostando, hein? Está sinalizando esse WhatsApp aí, gente. Está funcionando. E se eventualmente alguém quiser também, além do WhatsApp, perguntar diretamente, nós temos os nossos assistentes com microfones apostos para seguir até os senhores, por favor.
Well, I will start with a question. I've read that your institution doesn't employ smokers and obese. Could that action be considered a kind of discrimination? And how is the compliance sector? What's your opinion concerning this action of your institution?
Yes, thank you for the question. Is this on? Can't tell. Okay. Thank you for the question on that. So that was an action that we took several years ago that got a lot of reporting. People, when we came out and said we were no longer hiring smokers, it became national news. We were the first organization to do that. The newspapers came out and said, how can you do that? You're discriminating against people. What a terrible organization. First of all, there's no law that protects smokers. Smokers are not a protected class, at least in the United States. There's nothing that says if you smoke, you're protected. So legally, we're able to do that. Second, we said, we're a hospital. We're a leader of quality care to patients. And smoking, as you may be aware, is probably one of the leading causes of diseases. And our CEO, Dr. Toby Cosgrove, came out and said, how can we be a world-class quality provider if we promote smoking, we allow smoking in our organization? So he came out, and it was very controversial, and said, we are no longer hiring smokers. It was very negative at first. We provided, it was grandfathered, meaning that if we had employees that smoked, we didn't terminate them, but we provided them free care to stop smoking, to whatever they, there's a lot of different programs they can go through, and we provided free care for them. But what we determined was that when you look at the cost of health care for smokers, it is considerably higher than the cost of health care for non-smokers, because it creates so much disease. So we said, one, we're going to promote a healthy environment at the Cleveland Clinic by not having smokers, and two, it would help reduce our cost of health care within the Cleveland Clinic. What was interesting, it was very negative at first, but then other companies started to do it. And now, several years later in the United States, many companies now will not hire smokers. It's almost standard in the United States that a lot of companies will not hire smokers. So it's interesting how it went from being very controversial and negative to now it's very, very positive. And we've reduced, I think, the number of smokers at Cleveland Clinic. I think I just heard this. I think our number of smokers are 4% of our people smoke. Nationally, it's about 25%. So we've cut down. Also, as we were talking earlier, the cost of health care for Cleveland Clinic employees has gone down significantly since we've done this. So the cost that we pay to care for our employees, since we focused on obesity, and we have lots of programs within the clinic for obesity. For instance, I work out every morning. I do yoga every morning. I started yoga class about 8 years ago. And so we promote that. Another item is our health insurance internally. We were talking earlier, we have levels of cost for our employees that healthy employees that are not obese, do not smoke, we pay, including myself, we pay the lowest cost of health insurance. And then, depending upon your health, the cost of your health insurance with that Cleveland Clinic goes up. So we decided we're quality care, we want to focus on it. So it was very controversial, but it's been very effective, and many other companies are now doing it as well.
Esse aspecto é muito interessante. Nós estávamos conversando antes sobre, no fundo, quando nós igualamos pessoas que não têm hábitos saudáveis, ou seja, têm um potencial de doença maior, fumantes, obesos, pessoas que não têm atividade física, a pessoas que conservam a saúde, nós estamos distribuindo um custo que é diferente para pessoas que são diferentes. Então, essa ação da Cleveland Clinic de fazer com que com as pessoas que assumem um risco de doença maior paguem mais pelo custo do que as pessoas que tendem a preservar a sua saúde. Eu acho que esse é um conceito que nós devemos explorar mais aqui no nosso país. I have one question that it's from Guilherme do Hospital Samaritano. How you deal with when you receive from one of your workers a report of something wrong happening in your hospital? How you search for the veracity of the information? How is it the usual procedure in cases like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Thank you. It really depends on what the issue is. So some of the issues we can investigate, we can actually go into the department and investigate the issue very openly. There are other issues where we have to be more behind the scenes, and we don't let the people in the department know that we're doing it. So depending upon what the issue is, depends on the tactic that we take. A lot of information is now electronic, so we can do a lot of investigation without anyone knowing, because depending upon what the issue is, we can go on and look. If it's documentation related or quality of care related, we can determine a lot of that without letting anyone know. Other things, other issues, we have to go in and talk to people. The main thing is, if we're investigating in a department and somebody asks me, well, how did you find out about that? Or, well, how do you know? I always say, it doesn't matter how I know. Is this true or not? And we always protect the person who tells us, because we want to make sure that it doesn't matter. If it's an issue, it doesn't matter how we find out. But it really, yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because the issue determines the tactic that we take.
And another question: how do you see? What's your opinion about the compliance culture in Brazil? What kind of information do you have?
Well, the only information that I have is what you read in the media, and I know that the sponsor of this forum is very good about what they report. I can't necessarily say that about all newspapers and the like. So, like everyone else, what I know is just what I read. Now, with my experience with Cleveland Clinic in the media, often the media doesn't get it right, and I read a lot of things that are not true. So, unfortunately, I just know what general knowledge.
Here I have another question from Hospital Samaritano. Referring to this subject, once reported, we do have to take action. It is a matter of compliance or leadership. It seems Cleveland Clinic has a rigid disciplinary standards. And is it not a restriction for innovation and entrepreneurship?
Oh, good question. Cleveland Clinic is known as an innovation leader. We have the largest healthcare innovation institute in the United States. And no, that's not a problem for innovation. Often we hear that. We hear innovators often say that compliance could keep innovation down, but it doesn't, because no matter what you're doing, whether you're doing innovation or you're treating patients, you need to do it in an ethical manner. And innovation should not be done unethically. The key is not to slow innovation down. So as I said, we have to respond quickly. If we take lots of time, then yes, it could slow things down. But the key is quick response. But we're a leader in innovation in Cleveland Clinic, and we're worldwide known for that. Yet we're also one of the most ethical companies in the world.
Well, as you know, I am a doctor too, and the question is, sometimes the doctors, they resist a little bit to changes of culture. How are the doctors involved in this process, in the process of compliance in your institutions?
Yes, and that's a good point. You know, one of the cultures with doctors is that they make their own decisions, that they see their patients, they kind of control things. And so you're right, from a cultural standpoint, it could be a little more difficult. But that's where the training and education comes in. As I mentioned, I spend a lot of time with our doctors at the clinic personally talking about compliance and regulation and why what they're required to do is important, and if they understand it. I mean, one of the things I've found, doctors are very smart people. You don't become a doctor by not being smart. So generally what I find is when they understand why they need to do something, then they can be compliant. But if they don't understand it, if they don't get it, then they don't follow it. So the key is the education and training with physicians and making sure that they understand why they need to do it. Not just, you have to do this, but here's why, and here's how it benefits the organization or the patient, or whatever. So that's a good point. That's where the education and training comes in.
Another question related with doctors. There are several hospitals here in Brazil, like Albert Einstein, where the doctors are not employees. And so they work at the hospital, they have patients, but they are quite independent. How is it common in the United States? Is the same model, and how is it if we consider compliance actions concerning this kind of relationship?
Yeah, that's a great point. We didn't talk about issues here, compliance issues, but with our board, with our senior management board, one of the biggest issues that we have and that all hospitals have in the United States is that very issue, is for our employees and our employed physicians, it's very easy to say, here's what you have to do, but that is a very tough compliance issue when you have independent physicians that use your hospital and having them follow those policies and procedures as well as federal regulations. It's very difficult, and it's probably one of our big exposures we have is having the independent physician doing a non-compliant activity. But the reality is, if they do something unethical or non-compliant, it's your organization's problem. So again, it comes to education and training and being able to, what I do is I talk to the independent docs and again, try to explain to them why they want to do this. And what I tell them is compliance is here to protect them. I tell this to all of our doctors. I said, we have a compliance department because we're trying to protect you. We're trying to keep you out of problems. We're trying to keep you out of jail. So that's how you have to explain it to the non-employed physician is we're actually trying to protect them and keep them out of trouble.
Can you give examples how to design a new culture standards? Is it driven by behaviors changing?
Yeah, culture change is the hardest thing to do. I mean, trying to get people to change the culture or change the organization is tough. And again, part of it is one developing this, the policies and procedures, and that's something that that takes a lot of time. As I said, this takes a lot of hard work. This is not an easy process. But again, it's not only developing them, but the culture change gets into the people understanding why they need to do it and why it benefits them and why it benefits the organization. You can't just say, well, it's good for us for you to do it. You need to be able to show them why it's good for them. And it also gets down to the disciplinary standards as part of the culture. If you just say to do this and you don't do anything when people don't do it, then you're saying it's not important and culture doesn't change. It's important to make sure that when people are non-compliant, that actions are taken, and that really helps in the change in culture. But it's hard. This what we talked about today is not easy.
Yeah, and a question concerning the compliance actions related to external vendors. How is it your actions concerning other companies or vendors? How is it your activities concerning this external relationship?
Yes, external relationships are important because, as you know, many frauds that are committed through cooperation with vendors, which makes it difficult. At Cleveland Clinic, all of our vendors get a copy of our code of conduct. All of our vendors are explained what our expectations are for them to follow. We put in our contracts, in the vendor contracts, we put in an audit clause that says that we can come in and audit them if we think there's any problems or concerns. But again, part of it is setting the expectation and knowing that any non-compliance will terminate the relationship, if not result in lawsuits or the like. But you're right. It's getting other people to work with you. Now, we're fortunate at Cleveland Clinic. Vendors want to work with us. We're a company, an organization that vendors want to be part of, so we can help dictate, saying, if you want to work with Cleveland Clinic, here are our expectations. And we actually annually have a vendor meeting where we have probably 400 or 500 vendors attend a one-day session about our expectations, and I'm on that agenda, and I speak for about a half an hour on our compliance and ethics expectations.
How to deal with the challenge between technologies coming up fast and more expensive, and healthcare companies saying sometimes that physicians prescribe without protocols? Is there any issue in compliance that argues that labs pay physicians?
Say the last part again.
Is there any issue in compliance that argues that labs pay physician, the relationship between companies and physicians that sometimes is not very
you mean like pharma
open?
Companies?
Yes.
A big issue in the United States is conflict of interest. And conflict of interest is a big compliance issue. So you have situations where pharmaceutical companies or device manufacturers will pay physicians to be consultants, and the physician may get 20 or 30,000 US dollars to be a consultant. And then if that doctor then just uses that company's products, is that an issue? So we at Cleveland Clinic have a very strong conflict of interest policy and program where we have a separate department that evaluates all relationships. If a physician gets money from a pharma company or a device manufacturer, they cannot be involved in the purchase decisions from that company, so that we can't, that influence can't be there. That is a huge issue, and that's something the organization has to, again, set policy saying, if you're getting money from let's say you're an orthopedic surgeon and you do knee replacements, at the Cleveland Clinic, you cannot be involved in the decision as to what knees you're going to buy, because you have a relationship and you may automatically want to buy from that one company. So we separate the purchase decisions from people who get money from companies. Yeah, that's a huge issue nationally.
And how frequent are cases of moral problems between workers in your hospital? What kind of actions do you usually having cases like that concerning doctors and other workers, or religious problem, or sexual
harassment.
harassment.
Yeah, so like I said, we did over 1,000 investigations last year, which are a lot. We're a big company, and a number of them are of that type. Not necessarily business compliance, but sexual harassment and those types of things. And again, we take those seriously and we investigate those. Often we have the Human Resource Department to look at that, or the Law Department. But when you have 40,000 employees, and again, not everyone's perfect, so we do have those kinds of issues. So the stuff that we handle is a very broad background of things, but we deal with those personal issues as well. But again, we communicate the importance of not violating those regulations, and that action is taken. I mean, we terminate employees, we take action against employees for any of those kinds of things.
Don,
Yes.
Felipe, Revista Diagnóstico. I would like to ask you, we've talked in general, but I would like to ask you if you could give us some examples from the simplest cases of non-compliant behavior to, I know that you had people sent to federal prison. So could you give us some examples, of things that happened in the Cleveland Clinic that you take care of, and the results?
Sure. So, like most places, I can give you some examples of a couple of different kinds of things. So, one, it's very easy for employees with technology today to set up fake companies, and with word processing programs, fake invoices. So we've had a situation where an employee set up a fake company within the state of Ohio, and then submitted. He was a manager who had an approval level. He could sign up to $10,000 US dollars. It was his approval level. So he set up a fake company and sent in fake invoices for $6,000, $7,000 for something that wasn't done, and then he approved them, and payment was made to this fake company, of which it was his fake company. And he did this over a period of a couple years. And one of the ways that we find this, and we have a lot of ways to look for fraud. So for instance, one of the things you do to look for fraud is you look at vendors with approval levels of, like if somebody has a $10,000 approval level, we'll look to see, is there a vendor whose invoices are always in the $9,000 range, just below his approval level. And in this one person, we saw that there's a whole lot of invoices coming in from this one company, and they were always $9,200, $9,700, just below his level. Then we looked into it, saw what the company was. We did some investigation on the company and found it was a fake company, and then we ended up obviously terminating that person and prosecuted that person, and that person right now is in federal court. We had another individual who had a relationship with a fake company, or not, a real company. His girlfriend worked in the billing department for one of our vendors, and he did the same thing. He set up a situation where he would buy real product. He would buy a product that cost $5,000, and he told her, bill us $9,000. We'll pay you the $9,000. You give your company the $5,000. So the vendor thought they were getting the $5,000 they were supposed to get, and then this guy and his girlfriend would split the $4,000 between themselves. And then we found that along the same lines. And we've put, right now we have two past employees who are in federal prison for those kinds of activities. So there's those kinds of billing type activities. Those are the most prominent, where people are working with a vendor or setting up fake companies themselves. And again, our internal audit group looks for those kinds of activities. So those are two examples.
Eu gostaria de fazer uma pergunta, talvez a pergunta final do debate. Meu nome é Reinaldo, acabei de me apresentar da Revista Diagnóstico. Eu queria saber de Tom, se os pacientes enxergam uma vantagem competitiva o fato da Cleveland ser considerado o hospital mais ético do mundo, como o hospital lida com essa questão. As pessoas tendem a procurar hospitais éticos no final, na hora de decidir por um tratamento. Como é que você poderia falar sobre isso?
Do you think that the patients have the perception about this principle of Cleveland Clinic? Do you think that the patients search the Cleveland Clinic because of this program?
Yes, I do. And we promote the fact that we're one of the world's most ethical companies, and we make sure, one, that people understand that. And I think it's evident not only in Northeast Ohio, but Cleveland Clinic last year, in 2014, we had patients from all 50 of the United States and over 100 countries. People came from over 100 countries to come to the Cleveland Clinic for their care. Not only quality care, but I think people understand when patients come to the clinic that they know we're an ethical organization and that we do the right thing. They know we make mistakes, but they know that we take care of them. And I think it's, again, part of our culture.
Okay, just I'll ask you to make a final comment. What could you suggest to the hospitals that are starting this process? How should they start? How should they move in this direction?
Well, what I tried to provide with you today is a roadmap. You know, the 7 elements of an effective compliance program. I try to provide you, here is the map to take, that if you do not have a formal program now, and you start with those 7 elements, the first few are organizational things that you can set up, that you can start. And I'm open, by the way, if anyone wants to call and talk to me. I get calls from all over the country on this process. I'd be more than happy to talk to people. But start with, you know, with the compliance organization, the policies and procedures, and the auditing and monitoring, and then the other items come what happens when you find them, how you respond and the disciplinary action. That's once you find things. But I tried to provide the map to follow to do that. And again, it's not easy, but your employees will really appreciate the fact that you do this.
Então, nós queremos agradecer muito a brilhante conferência e as perguntas respondidas. E só como reflexão, nós íamos imaginar quanto dinheiro poderia ser poupado se a Petrobras tivesse um sistema de compliance como a Cleveland Clinic tem. Eu acho que esse é um exemplo para todos nós. Mudar o país. E certamente esta é uma forma muito adequada. Acho que nós temos que trabalhar profundamente nessa mudança cultural. Então, agradecemos e gostaríamos de aplaudir aí toda essa brilhante apresentação.
Thank you.